Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first ever episode of the Steelers Uncovered podcast, part of the team series, the new team series here at the Undroppables Network. I'm your host. My name is Marcus Galie. Follow me on Twitter at MDGalie, Galie. We'll be bringing you exclusive Steelers content here for the foreseeable future. Super excited. Shout out to Chalk and everyone else at the Undroppables for giving me this opportunity. Super stoked, super excited to talk about the hometown team. Live just 9 miles south of the city, ride or die for my Steelers. So just super blessed to be able to talk about my favorite sports team. A little bit about myself here before we get into the show. So I'm a physical therapist by trade. I'm 26 years old from the suburbs of Pittsburgh. I'm about, like I said, 9 miles south of the city. So super close, about a 20-minute drive. Played football in college. We actually played the same defense. We ran the same defense as the Steelers, which was super cool. Our coaches used to go to team meetings during training camp, take down notes. We used the same terminology, same positional calls, everything like that as the Steelers. So that's really where my interest started to peak even more, was during college. And I really started to watch them play through a different lens, more of an analytical lens versus just my, fanboy roots taking over. But I'm super stoked. There's a ton to get into here. I have a lot of opinions about my team, so making content should not be a problem. We're kind of in the dead period, as we know. The season just ended, but a few things to talk about today. So we'll have a pretty good show for you guys. But before we get into anything, I'd love to read you an ad from our sponsor over at Underdog Football. So fantasy football season over there at Underdog, it never stops. You can actually already draft for the 2024 season on Underdog Fantasy, the easiest place to play fantasy football. The big board is a pre-NFL draft fantasy football contest with all the incoming rookies in the player pool already. You can actually draft your team in 20 rounds, and that's it. 20 rounds, best ball format. You get the optimal score to fill your starting lineup. A great way to get your dynasty startup draft fix as well without any league management. So it's a little bit less involved, but you still kind of get that fix that you need, that you're looking for. It's only $10 to enter. Over $2 million in prizes are up for grabs. Just if you do go there, be sure to use promo code UNDROPPABLE, capital UNDROPPABLE, and you'll get your first deposit matched up to $100. So shout out Underdog for being a great sponsor for us here at the Undroppables. So today's show, we really could go a few routes. I don't even have notes because I could talk about my team all day. But what's new in the news is the OC, Arthur Smith. So we'll talk about him. He just got hired last week for the vacant OC job. Then we're going to get into a little bit of the running back situation. That's because we know Arthur Smith loves to run the football. I actually brought my hat down here because I support my offensive coordinator, and we're going to tote the rock. Let's go. And then finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about the quarterback crisis, as I call it, because we're not in a good spot there, not in a good spot at all. So getting into the offensive coordinator hire, Arthur Smith. So let's back it up a little bit. Matt Canada was the OC for the Pittsburgh Steelers for about 40 games. Very pedestrian stats. They were all over Twitter. Bottom 10 in yards per game, bottom 5, I believe, in scoring offense. They had never eclipsed 400 yards one time in his tenure in Pittsburgh. Just all kind of negative stats. When he was hired, it was pretty clear that he might not have been qualified. We went in with a rather open mind, but we could see soon into his tenure here as OC that it just wasn't going to work out. He ends up getting canned about halfway through the season. Taking over for him was Mike Sullivan, who's the quarterback's coach, and Eddie Faulkner, who's the running back's coach. They kind of tag teamed it. Finished out the season, saw some small improvements. Some of that had to do with the quarterback change as well. But overall, still just not good enough. Really, the last 3 years, they've been a bottom 10 offensive team in the entire NFL, which is pretty bad. So going in, so we knew the offensive coordinator position was going to be addressed pretty quickly in the offseason because we want to give whoever the new OC was going to be as much time as possible with Kenny Pickett to prepare for the 2024 season. So the reaction on Twitter from Steelers Nation, I will say, was very mixed. Some people loved it. Think it's a great scheme fit. Arthur Smith notoriously loves to run the ball. The Steelers last year, their identity was kind of let's run the ball, and like they were a pretty successful rushing team, especially the latter half of the season. So schematically, what you're thinking, a team who wants to run the ball, who has two good running backs in Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, hiring an offensive coordinator all designed to run the ball, theoretically is a pretty good match. And I'm on that side of the fence. I actually think it's a pretty good hire. It's not super exciting. It's not a mid-30s young up-and-comer coach from the Shanahan or McVay tree. They briefly, I think, tried to interview Zach Robinson, but I don't think he was all that interested. He ends up taking the Atlanta job. So they only interviewed 3 candidates. It was Arthur Smith, Gerard Johnson, who I believe is the quarterback's coach of the Ravens, and then, oh my gosh, the OC from the Panthers. I'm blanking on his name, Thomas something. So only interviewed 3. Arthur Smith gets the job, and again, I'm a fan of it. I think it makes sense. I also believe that some people just aren't meant to be head coaches. Arthur Smith, he had some good success in Tennessee. He in those 19 and 20 seasons, 9-7, 11-5. I believe in 2020 they had the number 1 seed in the AFC. Don't quote me on that. I know one of those years he was there, they did. But they were 6th and 10th in scoring. Proficient rushing offense, centered around more zone scheme runs, which is a little bit concerning. But I do think he'll be able to adapt here in Pittsburgh. And then they were able to capitalize on play action with Ryan Tannehill. A.J. Brown had 2 big seasons there. So we've seen him be successful as a coordinator. He did not have a ton of success as a head coach in Atlanta, and I think that's why there was a lot of negativity around the hire, because the last we saw of Arthur Smith was him absolutely blowing up at Dennis Allen at midfield after they got their ass beat in the last game of the season. They got the score ran up on them. So he kind of turned into a meme. We see all the things like, Arthur Smith can't use his player, things that. So fantasy Twitter hates him because those who spent high capital on Falcons players were not getting their return, and they just blamed him. However, actual football and fantasy football, a line that is often blurred, as a matter of fact, are 2 different things. So, as a Steelers fan on a Steelers show talking about the actual sport, I think it makes sense. I think it's a pretty good hire. I don't know, as a candidate, how attractive this OC job was to begin with. I could think of some other teams that I would rather go to that maybe have, better quarterback situations. They might have a little bit more freedom. Mike Tomlin, he runs the whole show. So, he's still going to have his hand in the offense a little bit, even though he's more of a defensive-minded head coach. Excuse me. But so, again, I don't know how much better of a candidate that they could have gotten. So I think it's a safe hire. I think it makes sense, and I'm going in with an open mind. I think that they will continue to run the ball, and that was a strength for them last year. So why not, bring someone in who has a philosophy for something that worked for you, and, see if they can maximize Kenny Pickett's potential. We're going to talk about Kenny Pickett a little bit later. First, though, about the running game, I want to talk about the 2 running backs. So wanted to get this off my chest for a while. Some of my closer friends know how I feel about this, but I'm not super vocal about my opinions on Twitter, but I will be on my show here. Somewhere along the way of when my man was drafted, Najee Harris, in 2021, people blurred the line of a bad pick and a bad player. So, taking a running back in the first round, is that worth it? Probably not. And I mean, we've just seen that time and time again, that teams who either spend a high pick, or you see super good running backs, just to let, like the Aaron Jones, Kyron Williams, Ramondre Stevenson, a 4th round pick. You can get good starting caliber NFL running backs later in the draft. And we've seen it just be such an easily replaceable position that spending first-round draft capital, and especially too with such a short shelf-lived position, it's probably not the smartest thing to do. So from that argument, I understand. But that, like, taking a running back in the first round somehow got turned into Najee Harris is not a good football player, and that is just so far from the truth. He has 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons with bottom 5 to 10 quarterback play for his entire career, poor offensive line play his entire career, and all he does is fight and get tough yardage. Yeah, he's not fast. People say, oh, well, he's not fast. He was never fast. Go turn on his tape at Alabama. His longest run in his career was 50 yards, and it was against Notre Dame, that crazy play where he hurdled the dude standing on the sideline. Like, that's not his game. He's going to hit you with those 5, 6, 8 yards, 22 yards, 15 yards. Similar to how Le'Veon Bell wasn't fast either, but he was just so consistent at getting positive yards that it was effective. And Najee Harris has been effective. I think part of the reason that Najee started to get a lot of hate really at the beginning of this year, it kind of died down because he finished so strongly. But the emergence of Jaylen Warren, who's a fantastic second running back to have, he is a totally different player from Najee Harris. Now, they bring the same mentality in terms of running hard and just getting downhill quickly, which it's great. It's great that they both run that way. Now, the major difference is Warren is much more explosive and faster. This should not be earth-shattering information as it was to some people, seeing how he's 6 inches shorter and 30 pounds lighter than Najee Harris. So, yes, I would hope that he's more explosive. But either way, I love Jaylen Warren. He's a great player. He's a great number 2 to have. And what makes me the most mad is the running game was really the only part of the offense that was somewhat successful in 2023. Yet fans were still finding a way to gripe, oh, Warren should be the starter. Harris is terrible. Like, no, they should split carries exactly how they do because it's working. And you can see they each have their own design schemes that they're good at. Warren was getting a lot more perimeter plays. They were designing pass plays for him, catching the ball out in space, making people miss. Najee Harris was really running that inside zone split well. They were doing that little, probably too much of the toss play with him, but they were effective at what they were doing, and it can just be left at that. Having 2 good running backs is not a problem. It's a good thing. Just be thankful that they're both on the team that we want to win. So that's my big take there. To summarize that kind of, no, Najee Harris is not bad at football. Because Jaylen Warren is good, that does not mean that Najee Harris should never play. They both feed off of each other. They actually help each other succeed. They keep each other a little bit more fresh. And they're a great 1-2 punch, and I actually think Arthur Smith is even going to maximize the 2 of them even more. So if you're a fantasy owner of either of them, you got to be a little bit excited about Arthur Smith coming in because we know he likes to run the ball. So expect that trend to continue in 2024. Now, switching positions here. So touched on the running backs. We're going to go to what I'm going to call the quarterback crisis because that's where we are right now in Pittsburgh. And this is not just a 2023 problem. Fortunately, this dates back to Big Ben's final year in 2021. So it was very apparent that they did not really have a successor plan for Big Ben. Quarterback for 18 years in Pittsburgh. He's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, rightfully so. But when he retired after 2021, so 2022, the draft comes. This is the weakest quarterback class since I've started paying attention to the draft, probably in 10 to 15 years. It's not a good quarterback class. Steelers are sitting right there at 20. I believe that if you just roll with either Trubisky or Rudolph for that year, see what you have. You're probably not going anywhere in the playoffs, even if you do make it. Bide your time, wait for a better quarterback class, give it another year, make a trade, sign a free agent. They opted to take Kenny Pickett at pick 20, which I believe was a little bit forced and almost a panic pick because I don't think they expected him to be there when they were picking. The reason I say that is because We know how like thirsty teams are for quarterbacks. There was a couple like Seattle, Detroit, New Orleans, I think was up there. There were some teams that needed a quarterback that, a lot of mock drafts had either Kenny Pickett or Malik Willis maybe getting taken high in the first round. And I truly think the Steelers did not expect Kenny Pickett to be there when they were picking at pick 20. And the fact that he was, I think they kind of panicked and they turned their card in immediately. I think Mike Tomlin said it took 14 seconds for them to turn it in. So they picked Kenny Pickett, and, to this point in his career, he has 25 starts. He's thrown 13 touchdowns in 25 games, and he has not finished the game due to injury 5 times in his 25 starts. You can make all the excuses you want for him. Bad offensive coordinator, sure. Subpar offensive line, okay. But, 25 starts is a big enough sample size for someone who I believe is 25 years old. It's not like he's one of these Strouds or Richardsons who came into the league at 21. He played 5 years of college at Pitt. Excuse me. So he came in kind of like Joe Burrow, like a little bit later. He really maximized his time in college. Kenny was a Heisman finalist, improved his draft stock, got him taken in the first round. But, it just has not been good enough. And you saw, like, this year, at the end of 2023, he was healthy. Seattle, he was healthy for the Ravens game, and he was healthy for the playoff game. And they opted to take Mason Rudolph, someone who they knew his skill set because he's been on the team for 5 years. They opted to roll with him, and rightfully so. Like, he was the hot hand. He was playing well. He was throwing multiple touchdown passes in a game, which is something Kenny has done one time in 25 starts. It's kind of hard to believe. So I would have done the same thing as a coach, but the only problem is, like, how does it take this long to see that Rudolph is the best quarterback on your roster still after spending a first, paying Mitch Trubisky $10 million, which is just inexcusable. And again, they squeaked their way into the playoffs by the Jags blowing it, but they could have had that position already locked up had they just played the correct quarterback when Kenny got hurt. I don't know. Like I said, Rudolph has been in that locker room on the team for 5 years. You know what he is. You can't see in practice that he's better than Mitch Trubisky. You got to roll him out for 2 3/4 games, lose all 3 to 3 very beatable teams. Like, it's just the whole quarterback situation since Ben has been mismanaged, and we're seeing that now. My guess is Kenny Pickett will return in 2024 as a starter. They're probably going to give him one more chance with an actual offensive coordinator, but I'm pretty much out on him, unfortunately. I think, like I said, 25 games is a large enough sample size. I've seen all I need to see. I'm kind of over it. I don't really know what they should do at the moment, unless they make a trade for a Fields or something like that, which I would like because it gives them definitely a better puncher's chance in a stacked AFC. But I doubt they're going to do that. I think it's going to be Kenny again in 2024, and I think the 2024 season is going to look a lot like the past two. Sitting kind of in that 9-8, maybe 10-7 range, might get into the playoffs, but probably will not win. But it's okay. I love my team. I'm realistic. That's how I see it. I'm not just going to say everything is sunshine and rainbows because it's not. We haven't won a playoff game in 7 years. In the last 5 playoff games we've been in, we've been outscored 66-0 in the first quarter. So those are just the numbers. I'm just reporting what's out there. But again, love my team. Super excited to be making content for them moving forward. And again, shout out Chalk and the rest of the Andropolis for the opportunity. Thanks, guys, for listening. And here we go, Steelers.